All right. You get to see the green screen, which is going away, by the way. So, hi, everybody. I wanted to go over this because I probably should have talked about this a long time ago. If you go back through all the interviews, this is one thing I've never mentioned in all of the time on the channel. And again, my name is Robert Gaines with the Free Time Mastermind podcast. And I'm going to talk to you about the most important protection that you can have for you and your business. This is not an ad. I'm not selling anything. And I think it's really incredibly important. But let me tell you first why I feel so strongly about this. In around 1997, I was hanging out with a lot of musicians. I really loved the scene. I was in San Antonio, and the music scene, the rock scene was really happening at that time. It was exciting. And I liked hanging out with the artist. I was trying to be a musician myself. That wasn't going very well. I had bought a 4-track Tascam recorder, which recorded on cassette. If you don't know what a cassette is, you can ask in the chat. I'll explain it to you. If you're a little bit younger, you might not know what that is. But anyway, I was having a blast with that, and I saw that I was understanding the technology very, very quickly, but I was not understanding how to play music. But to be honest, I wasn't putting in the time to practice the guitar, which was what I was trying to be, like everybody else, lead singer and guitar player, right? So I then pivoted and I thought, I want to stay in this community. I don't want to just go to live events and sit there and watch. I want to participate in some way. So I started to invest in some equipment, live PAs, very small one at first, and started offering my services for free because the way I was raised is that, sometimes you first have to go through that where you give your service away for free. You refine and hone your technology, and then you start to sell it. So I started that. I had a small PA, and I was working with really new and up and coming bands, working in really rough places. My gear, after only a few months, looked like it had years of use. I mean, somebody even poured beer right through one of my floor monitors during a gig. And that's when I decided, I love doing this. I love running sound, but I don't love watching my equipment get destroyed night after night. I mean, it was getting busted down quick. And I thought, what's the next thing I can do? And I decided to start a recording studio. I had just bought a house that was a little bit too big for me, and I had some extra space, and I thought, okay, I can convert the garage to the main recording room, and one of the bedrooms would be perfect to have as the viewing room, as the control room. So I started doing that, and I went back and I contacted some of the same bands that I had worked with, and I said, hey, come over. I'm buying equipment, I'm testing things out. So I was inviting people over, and we were just doing demos. Well, one day I came home and all the equipment was gone. This is a very short version. This is a much longer story. This is a very, very, for the sake of time, because I do have an interview. I have to show up on Daniel Lucas's Book 101 review podcast. I'm very excited about that, but I want to jump on and do this really quick. So, yeah, apparently they shook loose the back sliding glass door, which I was 25 at the time. I didn't know anything about that stuff. And that's a very easy way to break into a house. And they just shook some stuff and came right in, and they took everything. They took everything. I had guitars, I had mics, I mean, it was unreal. It was, by the time it was done, it was $21,000 worth of gear. Now that's $21,000 in 1998 money. So I checked it a couple of months ago. I think it's $39,000 worth of stuff now. I did have insurance. And the problem is, so there were two immediate problems, and I learned two powerful lessons right off the bat. Your insurance company does not have your interest at heart. A lot of that equipment was financed. I was very young. They thought I was running a business, although it wasn't officially a business yet. It was going to be eventually. If you're running a business out of your house and you have a regular homeowner's policy, it's not covered to run a business. You need a separate policy. I didn't know that at the time, but I wasn't violating that. Second thing, I thought the police back then, I actually thought police, hunted down leads and chased people, and I thought I might get my stuff back. And I went to the pawn shops and I told them about the burglary, and I put the word out and gave equipment lists all over the place. I really tried to, because I had no idea. I'd had a lot of bands come through, and though I had a few suspects, there was no way I could know for sure who did it. Well, the insurance company, which I won't say the name, but if you want to ask me privately and message me, I'll let you know who it was, because there's an interesting story to that that I'll tell later. Once I'm fully out of the industry, I'll tell you how I rectified that situation. But in the short run, the insurance company brought me in and put me in front of their attorney, which I didn't really. I was 25. I didn't. They said, "Come in. We want to talk to you. We have a special investigator that will work with you." And naive 25-year-old me, I thought, "Oh, great! They're going to investigate this. They're going to catch the person. Hopefully, I'll get my equipment back." No, I was the target of the investigation. They thought I was being fraudulent. They thought for some reason I had purchased all this stuff and then quickly made it disappear because I hadn't had it very long. Later, for those of you that know, I actually had that job later. I was also a special investigator for an insurance company. And of course, I never drag netted innocent people like myself. All the people I went after had histories. I made sure I never put anybody through what that insurance company put me through. So the reason why I say, and here is what I'm talking about, having an attorney. And people tell me, "Robert, I don't have the money to put an attorney on retainer." So for those of you that don't know, you can call any attorney. You can hand them some money, and they'll put you on retainer. In other words, you give them money, it goes into like an escrow, into a bank account, so to speak. And if you ever need anything, if you need any legal help, you can call them at any time, and then they'll start to bill against this account, this pile of money. People that I bring this up to privately, because I tell everybody because of what I went through, and I'll explain that more in a moment. They say, "Robert, I don't have $1,000 or I don't have $2,000. I understand you say that now, but if you get pulled over, and I know people personally that this has happened to, they've been pulled over by the police. There was a miscommunication or misunderstanding. They find themselves in jail, and then it's 3 a.m. somewhere, and they're having to get an attorney or pay a bail bondsman, and now they're calling grandma because they need $6,000. Whereas if they had the attorney that was available 24 hours, they would have never ended up in the back of that police car. So which do you wanna do? Do you wanna get hit? And of course, not only do you have the $6,000 bail bond potentially, you have other expenses that could be avoided. I have had an attorney on retainer for a very long time. I've had attorneys on retainer before, and I can tell you, and I've traveled around the country, and I've had a lot of interactions with police, none of them pleasant, unfortunately. Um, and when I get my attorney on the phone, on speakerphone with the cop present, I will tell you, the attitude and the tone completely changes, um, because they don't want problems. And, some of them are really great, just the ones that I run into haven't been. And I did interview, I encourage you to go back and look at the episode for Attorney Shield, which I think the name of that is, the app that crashed Apple, if you look through my episodes. And they started a whole company around people having problems with the police. If I had had back to the burglary, when I started having this interaction with the insurance company, had I lawyered up earlier, I did eventually get the settlement, which again, that's its own story. But if I had an attorney early on, because I had to get one later on after I realized the situation I was in, that the insurance company was out to get me, not the people that stole my stuff, and that the police were not gonna help me. An attorney earlier in that process would have helped, because when I went into that room to get what was called an examination under oath, it was the special investigator from that insurance company, their attorney. As soon as I walked in, they said, we got talking, and I was like, "What is this? I don't understand what's going on. I thought we were here to help solve the burglary." I was so naive. And they mentioned to me, they said, "Well, if you don't feel comfortable, you can get an attorney." And I thought, "Why would I need to get an attorney? I've been paying this insurance company. They're there to help me, right?" Sometimes, maybe, but not in that situation. My luck wasn't very, very good. Let me give you a second scenario. And again, I'm not talking about other people, things that's happened to other people. I'm gonna share things that have happened to me. The next thing that happened is I had a house. This was when I was a special investigator for an insurance company. I bought a house that was a little bit too big for me, and I rented out some of the rooms. Not so much like an Airbnb, but I was renting out to other employees of this insurance company, which I won't mention the name. If you look at my LinkedIn, you can see who this company is I'm talking about. Um, and one of the people that was paying to stay there had a friend come over, and everything was fine. I think they'd visited a couple of times. And then this renter came to me a couple of weeks after this friend's last visit, and they said, "Did you know that, so and so fell in the front yard?" I went, "Really? He fell in the front yard?" Because I had cameras everywhere at that time. And unfortunately, they told me after the video had already erased over itself. And I said, "Well, let me go look at the video." And they said, "Oh, it was a couple of weeks." I said, "They fell? I don't remember anybody have any scraped knees, scraped hands, no yelling, no, we didn't have an ambulance." And then they admitted to me, "Well, they didn't completely fall down. They just their foot they lost balance and their foot went out a little bit." And I said, "Well, explain to me what happened." And they took me outside and showed me, and they had stepped off of the sidewalk and stepped onto some paving stones and apparently slipped. But again, there was no signs of anything. And I thought that was really, really strange. And, although I knew the roommate pretty well, they did the same job for the same company that I did, and they eventually this person that I worked with, that I was renting a room to, eventually got fired from this insurance company, and that's their story to tell. But I started getting a really strange feeling about this, like it was a shakedown, and they were like, "Well, they might go to the doctor." I said, "Well, if they need to go to the doctor, go to the doctor." And so then a couple of days went by. I mean, I guess I know what they were doing. They were trying to get me to, offer up some money. It's just I was too dense. I mean, I'm one of those people you can't I don't take hints. You have to be very, very, very direct with me. I'm very literal. So I didn't get it. So then they had to come back a second time. And they said, "They're thinking about getting an attorney." And I said, "An attorney for what?" What nobody got hurt. There was no EMS. Plus at this point, I'm a fraud investigator. I understand how this works. I was working accident injury. So I knew the situation I was in. And here's the really important part for you. Um, I didn't have insurance on the house at the time. And I know that sounds really crazy, but when I bought the house, I got insurance on it immediately, and then the insurance company dropped me because unbeknownst to me, and I had the house inspected and I, played it by the book, there was a unapproved, unpermitted, extension to the property, and the insurance company said, "XYZ has to be fixed, otherwise it's uninsurable, we're dropping you." So I talked to some contractors, and the amount to fix this would have been a third of the value of the house, and I thought, "Well, I'm just gonna have to go uninsured because doesn't make any sense." And I knew I was only gonna stay there a couple of years. I had plans to move somewhere else, which I eventually did. So I was uninsured at that time, which turned out to be an advantage because I'll tell you from personal experience as a fraud investigator, these attorneys that have these ads on TV, "We'll get justice for you," and all that, that's true if the other party that harmed you has insurance. You can be sued personally, and sometimes that happens, but these ambulance chasing attorneys, uh, as soon as they find out there's no insurance policy or you have a really skinny insurance but you don't have a whole lot of coverages, they won't take it to trial because these firms don't like going to trial because that's time and effort for them. They want you to settle. They want a quick deal. They're gonna put some cash in their pocket. They're gonna put some cash in their client's pocket. Well, when I told my renter this, they were shocked that I didn't have insurance, and I said, "Yeah." I said, "That so they're gonna have to sue me directly in court, and if they're lucky," and at this time I had an attorney, and I said, "And if they're good enough to beat my attorney, who's very expensive per hour, very good attorney," I said, "If they're capable of doing that, if they're capable of winning, they're gonna have to get a judgment against me." And what they'll do is they'll, attach something to my assets. In other words, let's say to the title of my house. So let's say I lost a judgment and I owed them $30,000. If I didn't pay them immediately, they would file another thing and basically put a lien against my house. So if I sold my house, the first 30,000 would go to this party that was quote unquote harmed. Most attorneys won't touch that. They want an insurance policy because that's easy money. Selling somebody personal, I mean, suing somebody personally, they don't like that. Now, I'm not telling you to not be insured, and I'm also not telling you to have a very skinny policy, have a very low policy. You'd be better off with a good policy or a great policy and an attorney. Um, Insurance is a great level of protection, but I would say I would almost say, and again, talk to your attorney, talk to your insurance company. Don't listen to me. get your own advice. I'd almost rather have someone have an attorney on retainer in some cases than insurance if you're not required to have insurance. I paid cash for my house, so I had no legal requirement or contractual requirement rather to have insurance on my home. It's smart, but a lot of people, and I'm not wealthy, but I know wealthy people, and a lot of wealthy people are self-insured, which means they have so much money in the bank, so much in assets that if they get sued, if they have a problem on their property, they just handle it through their attorney and they make a settlement. Um, the other problem with having insurance, and I encourage you to have insurance, but even if someone presents a fraudulent claim, a lot of insurance companies do not want to spend a lot of time going back and forth, especially in an expensive trial. And again, I was a fraud investigator. I've seen insurance companies knowing that this person was fraudulent, knowing the case was nonsense, and they paid anyway because they look on paper and they decide, you know what, we can pay him 40,000 or we can spend 60,000 in court fighting this. And they'll pay the crook 40. I've seen it. I've been in the room when that decision was made, and it's just a mathematical calculation. So I understand a lot of people hate insurance companies, and I get it. And they, the accusation is they're always trying not to pay for things. In my experience, I see them pay for a lot of things they shouldn't, where they should be fighting this fraud, but they make a mathematical decision. So where does an attorney come in for all of this? You get them in early on. You get a defense. So first of all, having an attorney basically means you don't have to talk to the police. It also basically means you don't have to talk to the insurance company because the insurance company is looking out for their interest. I found that out in 1998. The police are looking out for their interest. If you've got a burglary or you've got something really bad going on and you need help, but it's close to the end of the police officer's shift, we think of them as heroes, and some of them are. They do great work, and some of them are just trying to get through their shift, and you're a hassle to them. And I know what that feels like to have my life utterly destroyed, to walk in my house and be that level of violation that somebody that had shared on. And I fed a lot of people that came to my house. Still to this day, I enjoy cooking. I have guests over. This is somebody that probably shared my dinner table and ate my food, and they took away the studio that I was going to eventually have a business. And it took me years to financially recover from that, even though I did get a what I would call a partial settlement from the insurance company. So we did talk about police interactions. I've had a lot of police interactions. And now I just get, so how that works is you have your attorney. I have him programmed in my phone. And although you should also go to an attorney and have a will, have your quote unquote affairs in order, even if you don't have much, it doesn't matter. Because if you don't have your stuff in order, usually the state will get whatever little assets you have instead of your family or your friends or somebody you really care about. So you should get a family practice attorney to do your wills and things like that. But the attorney that I would recommend, and again, do your own research, have a criminal attorney on retainer. People are like, what? Are you planning to commit a crime? That's what everybody says. No, 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 no. But that's the guy. If it's a police interaction or something hardcore, these are the toughest guys out there. And police departments and other agencies, they know these people. They have names. So it's almost like having a celebrity back you up. So if you're going with a big attorney firm, they may not know your particular attorney, but they may know the firm if they're big enough. And I went with a really good, well-known, what they call a South Florida attorney, and they're the toughest. You got New York attorneys, Philadelphia attorneys, South Florida attorneys. They're known for being very, very tough, which means they're defending my interest. So the police aren't going to look out for me. Insurance company is not going to look out for you. But your attorney has a very strong incentive to protect you, very strong. So check the Google reviews, check around, get some referrals. But I personally like criminal attorneys. Now, if I get into a situation where I did have to call this gentleman, this attorney, for some advice about something just about 2 months ago. It was a real estate transaction. Now he's a criminal attorney. But so he's the perfect guy to call at 3 o'clock in the morning if you end up in the back of a police car for some silly reason, for some mix up, some misunderstanding. But he has access to all the attorneys that I need. So when I talked to him about this real estate issue, he says, oh yeah, absolutely. So he gave me he says, this is not my specialty, but he advised me very lightly, and he said, "Look, if you wanna go any deeper on this, I know a guy. I got the perfect guy," because again, I love my attorney. I'd love to say his name. I don't know if he feels comfortable, putting it out there, and I don't know if it would be very smart if I share that here, but I can tell in the times that I've talked to this guy, I mean, he's great. He's looking out for me. He is what I wish my insurance company had been doing for me back in 1998 because that burglary changed the trajectory of my life. So I just wanted to say that. Take a look around. You don't have to necessarily get a criminal attorney, but just get started with that process. Yes, you do have to put some money up front, but oh, the peace of mind I have that I can go anywhere up and down the road. And if I run into any situation, I can have an expert on the phone 24 hours a day. This firm will pick up the phone whenever, and they're looking out for me. It's like having a best friend that understands the legal system. So I encourage you, get an attorney, put an attorney on retainer. It's the weapon that you it's great if you have it and don't need it, but if you need it and you don't have it in that moment at 3 a.m., you're trying to find an attorney. Not a good look. It's worth the grand or 2 grand and the peace of mind. You won't regret it. So I'll cut you loose at that. If you have any questions about that, reach out to me. I'm all over LinkedIn. You can send me a message here. I'll probably see it. My email is rg at like Robert Gaines at freetimemastermind.com. Would love to help you. I can't give you legal advice, but I did want to share that with you. Thank you so much. See you next time. And I'll be on Daniel Lucas's book 101 review. I'm not sure when that episode's going to come out, but I will be sitting down with him tonight. Thank you so much.